What is being?
Mm-hmm.
Being is existing.
Mm-hmm. Well, what is
If you're
being?
not being, you're not existing, right? And something that isn't there can't be being. Doesn't
Yeah.
exist, so it's
Right.
existing.
To me, being is a way of saying something in existence. You are existent. To be a being, you have to be existent. Yes, I would say that's
You have to be being to be being.
that's right.
Dig that sophistry.
Well, but I mean, that's just getting to the root of words, the meat of the words.
The meat of things.
That's right. We saw in honor of Elizabeth Taylor, we watched our favorite movie that she was in, which was Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And for years, can I just say this quickly?
Sure, say
I
all
was
you
like,
want.
what does that mean? Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? I could never get the joke, and it was never made clear in the film. And then, while I was sick, I read some novels, which I never do. And I wanted to read a Virginia Woolf novel. I had seen it referred to in something, and my God, I got through about 10 pages and said, this is too hard for being sick to read. And so that now I understand. She was like an experimental novelist, and her books are not easy reads. So that was the joke. You're afraid of tackling a Virginia Woolf novel.
Well, it was the joke was sprung at a college
Right.
staff party.
Right. So it would mean
Faculty party. So
they would know
they would have
that.
been on the know.
That's right. That's right.
It means you're intellectually developed enough, probably, to
That's right.
not
Be afraid of
intimidated
her.
by Virginia Woolf.
Or at least you've read the Cliff Notes.
Now, James Joyce, on the other hand,
Yes, I
Lincoln's Wake springs to mind.
haven't read any of his books either.
I read some of Ulysses and
Did
Down
you?
and Out, not Down and Out in Paris Alone, that's
No.
George Orwell.
Right.
What am I thinking of?
Portrait of the
Portrait of the
Artist.
Artist as a Young Man. You read that?
No.
You didn't?
No.
Oh, that was a good read.
Or maybe I did way back when I first met Arthur. I went on a kind of a novel reading binge because Arthur
That's
was
some
very
literary work she had to read, like all of Mickey Spillane.
like William Faulkner. Totally introduced me to William Faulkner.
You'd already been introduced to Carson McCullers.
Yes. That was one of the reasons we're together is a book called The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. But anyway, let's get off that. Let's talk about being. I like that.
Well,
So
I
what-
would say being is synonymous with experience.
Okay. Why
I'm
would you
kind of-
say that?
Well, because if you exist, and we've said this countless times on this show, we suggest the only thing you know absolutely is something's happening.
Right.
Kind of a variation of I think, therefore I am.
Right. It's like I experience, therefore I am. I
Yeah.
think that's really what Descartes was after.
If you're experiencing something, at least you can take comfort in the fact that you know one thing absolutely, and that's that you exist.
Right.
There is experience happening at your location.
There is being.
And the Game of God, our first book, The Game of God, Recovering Your True Identity, gameofgod.com. One of my favorite definitions is our definition of experience. Experience we define as being free of a survival identity. Experience is an ultimate state of being. It's an absolute state. It's the purest form of being. And it's contingent on the absent. How much your experience, how much your being is totally dependent upon how much you are free of any survival identity and its concurrent dynamics, flight, fight, dealing with, running, aggressing, all that stuff. The example we used on a long ago show was we spent some time in Australia with my ex-daughter and co-victim of disaster number 2, complete
I've
catastrophe.
never heard anyone talk about an ex-daughter. That's interesting.
And, pardon me, so you're just going to have to get used to this.
Yeah,
and we're here
sorry
doing
about
this, but it's the house of TB, is what it sounds like, a bloody TB
Well, the doctor
ward.
said Arthur had whooping cough, actually,
Which I
last
had
week.
once before it, when I was 16 years old.
Which
I'll never forget the 2 times, once in a public restroom and another time when this man at the service station, when they actually wiped your windows back in the olden days, was cleaning the window and looked through the window at my face when I had an attack of coughing where I coughed all the air out of my lungs and then started to suck in and no air came in. and the look of horror on his face as he saw the look of,
Terror.
there's no feeling like it.
Yeah.
But it'd be quick. You'd probably be done pretty quick. Anyway, the degree to
So
which...
wait. You were about to tell a story from Australia that illustrates...
Oh, yeah, thanks. I'm not well. I'm not weller than usual, which
Yeah.
is never
I'm
anything to write
a
home
little
about.
spaced myself, but at least I can
You can.
pull
Always
onto
count
a few
on Kate.
things. I thought Arthur did pretty good in his Arthur flying solo.
I was not
enjoyed
well
that,
during that.
but I enjoyed it personally.
Anyway, enough about us. Where am I? So my daughter in Australia,
Yes.
um,
Oh, yes.
I think we were in Melbourne. She wanted to see a bunch of movies, so we
Right.
took her to like a movie every day. And
Right.
the one that she insisted on seeing was Aliens, and totally terrifying film. And we suggest, our
And what was
example
she,
is
about 12 years old? Something like that.
about 12. But she insisted, so we took her to it, and she spent about half the time under the seat with her hands over her eyes and her ears closed, or hiding behind the standing room barrier in the back. She was terrified, and what we say is that she didn't experience aliens. If your eyes are covered up and your ears are closed, if you happen to be blind, we suggest there's no way in the world you can experience a Rembrandt. First of all, you're not allowed to touch it, so Braille is out. You can experience it like a person with sight. My daughter's inability to handle the scary scenes made her experience of aliens very degraded, since it was almost nothing but gut-churning horror from beginning to end.
Right.
So experience, which I'm holding right now, is synonymous with being. As you're experiencing being, your experience is contingent on being free of a survival identity.
So you're saying the flight-fight reflexes interfere with the experience of being.
Very much so.
Okay, what you know what I've noticed is there hasn't been no definition of being. Is that a real? And I can't remember. Do we have a definition of being in the Game of God?
I'm sure we don't, as a matter of fact. Interesting.
It is interesting. I mean, because that seems like a real lapse for us to not have a definition of something so central to not just a theology, but to the experience of life itself.
Well, how about experience? Being, a one-word definition, experience.
But then you define experience with the word being. It's totally circular, so that doesn't work either. So,
how about the state of being aware?
but that's being is the state of being. You
The
can't.
state of awareness.
Okay.
Self-awareness? Who's to say that an electron doesn't have self-awareness? That there's not experiencing happening there?
Right.
Who's to say that what are rocks made of? Molecules?
Well, we did start by saying, being is existent, is being,
Being is synonymous with experience.
no, being is synonymous with existence.
Was that what we said first?
That's where we started. That to be, you have to exist.
I'm
You have
sure
to
this show was a
be.
good idea.
Well, it's hey, you know what? We're not. I hope that we have made it clear in prior shows that we are not here presenting ourselves as like we're sitting on a mountaintop, giving you the tablets
I hope
of
not.
received wisdom. We are engaged in trying to undo the knots of existence ourselves. And, we've thought about this a lot, as you can probably tell, and discussed it a lot. And so a lot of the times when we've talked about things, we've talked about it plenty of times. So it sounds like we, have unknotted that problem. But this is a problem that clearly we have not unknotted yet. And it's a very deep problem. So to actually be, discussing it on camera, this is what we do at home. When we encounter a problem, as we talk about it like this. So we're just doing...
Trying to get unmuddled.
showing the unknotting process. And, if you viewer have a insight into what being is, we welcome We welcome your feedback. So,
I don't see why it couldn't be synonymous. Being is experience,
Right.
and experience is being.
right.
They're both absolute states. You know, our theosophy holds that the ultimate state of being is called supreme being. It doesn't mean the hairy thunder in the sky. Adam, where are you? That, you know, primitive
Right.
model. But it's ultimate consciousness. It's infinite oneness. It's the absolute truth. It's pure love. It's the unconditional experience of acceptance of what is, which an absolute state of love requires the unconditional perception of what is. Before you accept it, you have to perceive it. And we hold that absolute truth exists. Absolute consciousness exists. There's a point to life. There's a punchline. There's a home base. After the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, like whooping cough when you're 65 freaking years old, and countless other indignities, you got a few hours, that there's a punchline. There's a payoff. There better damn well better be.
Okay,
Or
well,
I'm
you know,
gonna
and I guess,
file a lawsuit that'll end all lawsuits.
for me, maybe one of the reasons it's difficult to define being is because in my theosophy, being is all there is. It's, you know, I think Ken Wilber calls the ground, the ground unconscious, but I think it's also the
I think
ground.
it's exactly the opposite.
The ground
It's the ground
being,
conscious.
but the ground being, that's kind of, you know, how I see it, is that there's this ground, there's this place you cannot go beyond, which is the source of all, which is the being. There is no place of not being. Being is, it's like the isness of the universe, the isness of everything that we can
and guess
possibly
what?
know.
To experience that state, you have to be enlightened, maybe just for starters, what we call enlightened. So the point is that because we've said many times on this show, because the human race is still operating overwhelmingly from flight, fight, survival behavior, very primitive animal with bare modicum of analytical intelligence, we are in a perpetual state of not being, of non-experience. One of our first films, when we went around Atlanta asking people what they thought the meaning of life was, and one man quoted Joseph Campbell, said, it's not the meaning of life we're interested in, it's the experience of life. And I'm not sure that's what he meant, but I hope he meant that, this interpretation, that what we call experience, I mean, sometimes I think the human race is so backward, like that realization you had that we consistently overestimate our level of consciousness and consistently underestimate our level of unconsciousness. It's almost like we've got it so ass backwards in so many areas. Understandable, we're primitive, evolving creatures with one foot out of the tree, barely. That what we call white is black. It's almost like the way we see the world is almost like a photographic negative, where the dark is the light. Maybe we could see the missing dark matter that comprises the overwhelming majority of the universe. Maybe we could see that if our heads weren't so far inserted up our nether regions. So what I'm getting at with this whole idea about being is that I think I've spent the vast majority of my life in a very limited state of being.
Yes.
Very limited state of, I think children, like wild animals, have a lot more appreciate, like be here now, being here now. When you're in the present and you're appreciating existent reality, you are childlike. And a child, except you become a little child, you will in no way enter the kingdom of heaven. That's what it means. Child is being.